Alright, so my plan today was to come downtown to shoot a video on how to create time lapses. But it's super ugly out here, and yeah, I didn't really think this whole thing through. I mean, the sky is basically one giant cloud, so not exactly what I'm going for, but luckily I have a lot of old time-lapse footage, so we'll just use that and I'll still make the same video. That should work. What's good, creative fam? Brandon Washington here, and in today's video we're gonna be taking a look at time lapses. But before we jump into it, if you're brand new to the channel and you haven't already, definitely consider hitting that subscribe button, because this channel is all about filmmaking gear, tips, and tutorials. But this gray wall's not really the best backdrop for this, so check this out and we'll get to the time lapses. I promise. Let's do it. Alright, so when it comes to shooting time lapses, it's all about intervals. So basically, a time lapse is a bunch of photos kind of stuck together, and when things happen in that type of motion, it makes it look like it's moving really fast, yada yada yada, basic stuff. But the trick to time lapses is the actual intervals themselves, and the intervals are how often is your camera taking a photo, what type of shutter speed you're currently shooting at, and then basically for how long. And so there's a lot of math involved, but I really suck at math, so I basically kind of break it down like this. So if your film is going to be played back at 24 frames per second, basically every 25 shots you get, 24 shots technically, you get a 1 second of video. Now the reason why I go based off 25 is because, well, it's easy to know if your camera's gonna take 100 shots or if it's gonna take 200 shots, and basically I divide it by 25, and that's how long I know my video is. So I know if I want a 4-second long time lapse, then I need at least 100 shots in order to get a 4-second long time lapse, right? I told you I was bad at math. Now the next part is how quickly is your camera gonna take those pictures. So for example, you can have your camera set to take a picture every second, or every 2 seconds, or every 3 seconds, and so on and so forth. So this can play out in your favor, and it can hurt you in both ways. For example, if you are shooting like stars, well, stars take a really long time to move. So you're gonna want something more like a 10-second gap between each shot, so that way you can actually see the movement. But if you're shooting like traffic, well, traffic moves really fast, and so if you wait 10 seconds, well, the car that was there in the first shot most likely won't be there in the second shot. So you really kind of have to play around with how quickly you want it to be. Now for me, I basically shoot most of my stuff at about a 2-second interval. It's a good speed for basically everything, but unless I'm shooting something, you know, really unique, I will shoot it at a longer one. Like I said, with stars, for example, in the example that you guys are probably seeing right now, I did this with a 10-second interval, basically taking a photo every 10 seconds, and it worked out perfectly. And for this, I actually just left it going overnight, so that way when I woke up in the morning, I could be surprised with what I got, and I actually was able to capture a really cool lightning storm through time lapse. So yeah, definitely play around with those intervals, find the right ones for you. But I personally like a second, 2 seconds, and then if I'm doing like people, then I typically like about a 1/2 second interval. The other thing you want to think about with time lapses is a lot of cameras have built-in time-lapse features. Like, for example, the Canon M50 has one, even Sony's A7 III has one. And when you use these built-in intervalometers, you want to make sure that they are giving you the option to actually keep the photos. Because if you're not keeping the photos, well, you're not getting the full resolution out of your time lapses. Now don't get me wrong, I 100% understand the benefit of being able to just press a button and run a time lapse. I mean, I use my GoPro for that all the time. It's a great little tool to be able to capture a quick time lapse. But if you want to have the most like creative and just like flexibility in post, then taking a time lapse that's actually based on images is going to work out better for you in the long term. Another one of the benefits is if you happen to have an image out of all of those time-lapse photos that you really like or that really works well for you, then you have that as an actual image. But if it's already stitched together in a video, trying to take it out then as a still, you're not gonna get the best quality out of it. So just another thing to consider. Now, a couple tips for how to get amazing time lapses. The first is lock your camera down on something. Now, it doesn't have to be a tripod, although a tripod is probably best. But if it is a tripod, make sure it's a good tripod. The last thing you want is, you know, the wind or a loose tripod head causing your image to kind of get wonky and stuff. In time lapses, is because most people are used to them being locked down unless there's like an intentional move, like a hyperlapse, which I'll cover in another video. It's very noticeable if there's shake in a time lapse. The other thing that you want to do is you want to find subjects that have a lot of motion to them. Typically people look for things like people or cars or clouds. So what I typically look for if I'm looking to get a time lapse of clouds is I want to look up and be able to stare at the clouds for a few seconds and actually see motion already. That's going to let me know that I'm going to be able to get a lot out of it. The other option is if you do have really slow moving clouds and you still really want to get that time lapse, then you're going to need a longer gap between your images. Like I was talking about earlier with the stars, if the clouds really aren't moving, then you're going to probably need maybe 4, 5, even up to 6 seconds in between your shots in order to make the clouds really look like they're moving. So this is definitely a good way for you to test it out and try different intervals, but this is basically a couple of the tips I have when it comes to shooting a time lapse. Oh yeah, another really big tip when shooting a time lapse is make sure your camera is set to manual everything. And I literally mean everything. Manually focus, manually expose. Don't shoot in aperture or shutter priority mode. Shoot everything in manual, because the last thing you want is your image to kind of be jumping around a lot in between your different shots. I mean, literally the focus can change and that will throw a time lapse off completely. So make sure that you have everything set to manual and you'll be much happier when you actually get your time lapse back, because let's face it, time lapses take a long time to shoot, especially really, really good ones. And the last thing you want to do is waste a bunch of time thinking you're getting an awesome time lapse. Look at it and it sucks. But there you have it, guys. Thank you so much for checking out this video. If you thought it was helpful, give it a big thumbs up. Also, if you guys do post your own time lapses, I'd love to see them. I like looking at other people's work, not only for inspiration, but just to see that you guys are out there creating, because at the end of the day, we are the creative fam. So make sure you're letting me know when you guys upload that content. And as always, thanks so much for checking out this video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.